So warming up before you play a show or before you dive into a really intense practice session really isn't most people's idea of fun. But believe me, it's such an essential thing to preserve our long-term health as guitar players. Now, warming up can actually prevent us from causing ourselves injury, especially when we're exerting ourselves either on stage or, as you will know, if you have a really intense practice session, sometimes it's really easy to overdo things. So making sure you've got a great, solid warm-up routine is essential. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my warm-up routine and showing you how I get ready for long sessions or live shows. So before I share my warm-up routine with you, I want to say that 96% of you guys that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. And I'd like to take this moment to ask you to please hit that subscribe button, because doing so allows me to keep growing the channel and making more content like this. If you enjoy these lessons and you get value from them, please hit that subscribe button and you'll see plenty more just like this. So as I said, I'm going to show you guys how I prepare for a live show, or how I would be preparing for a long guitar session, such as a video shoot or a studio session. These are the warm-up routines that I use on a regular basis. Now, what's really cool about the way this is put together is all of these things are infinitely adaptable to suit whatever you need. So I'm going to show you how I use these exercises, but you can take these away and you can either use them exactly the same as I'm using them, or you can move them around to different places on the neck. You can modify them. They're basically templates for you to use to really get the most out of your guitar warm-up. If you want the tabs for all of these as well, there's a link down below in the description for my Patreon page. So all the tabs are available via that link. Before you start warming up, it's also very, very important to remember that you need to start very slow with all of these things, especially if you're new to warming up. All of these things can be used as coordination builders, strength builders, and speed builders, as well as just great warm-up exercises. So if you're going to use these as coordination, strength builders, and speed builders, it's very important that you A, start slow, and B, don't exert yourself. So only do this within the realms of what you're actually capable of doing. Don't press super, super hard. Don't overly stress your wrists and your fingers and your hands as you're doing this, and don't do these things for hours and hours on end and put yourself into discomfort. As soon as you start feeling any discomfort with this, take a break, because these exercises are designed to help you over the long term, not within a week. So take your time with them and really enjoy the benefits by doing them properly. So the first exercise is the 1, 2, 3, 4s. This is where we take all 4 of our fretting fingers and we use them in a chromatic manner across the strings. So you can do this one anywhere on the neck. I'm going to start at the 5th fret of the low E string. I'm going to play the 5th fret with my index finger, the 6th with my middle finger, the 7th with my ring finger, and the 8th with my little finger. So this is a really common exercise, and you've probably seen this before in some capacity. What this is great for is, number one, finger independence on the fretting hand. It's great for your alternate picking, so obviously our down and up picking that we're going to be doing with our picking hand, but also coordinating our hands together as we move between the strings. So that 4-note pattern, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the low E. If you're finding that's too much of a stretch, you can do this higher up where the frets are narrower together, and as you get more confident with your stretching, you can move down where the stretch is going to be wider. 5, 6, 7, 8 is a great place to start if you're new to stretching your hand out. It's a nice distance between those 4 notes. So once we've played the 4 notes on the low E string by alternate picking them, we're then just taking it down to the A string, the D string, and so on until we get to the high E. It's going to be like this. Once we get to the top, we're then just going to go backwards like this. It's quite a simple exercise, but really this is just a great place to start warming up. As much as this really doesn't sound like a very exciting exercise, it's really, really beneficial. And I always start out every warm-up session with this. I'll do it in a couple of different places along the neck. I'll start really, really slow, and then I'll gradually increase the speed. And you can practice all of these exercises with a metronome if you want as well. They can also be used as speed building tools. The second exercise I'm going to show you is the same as the first exercise, but this is called walking 1, 2, 3, 4s. And this is a slight twist on the same exercise. So we're going to start from the same place. We're going to start from the 5th fret and we're going to play 5, 6, 7, 8. But once we've got to that position, we're not going to take all our fingers off and then go to the A string, because previously we'd lead the index finger and each time we're adding fingers on. This time, once we've got all 4 fingers in place, what we're doing is we're actually arching our fingers over and we're only moving the finger that we need. So what I mean by that is once I've done those first 4 notes, I'm not taking these fingers off, but I'm moving my index finger down to the A string and picking that, but the other 3 fingers are still on the low E. And as I increase the notes on the A string, I'm bringing fingers down. And I'm going to keep this pattern going all the way down to the high E string. So you can see I'm basically walking each finger one by one. I did take my little finger off there by accident, but you get the idea. Now, because you are holding fingers down, you will get some note clashes as you heard there. Again, it doesn't sound the greatest, but this is incredibly useful for your finger independence. You can also do this one in reverse. So start at the 5th fret of the high E, and then we're walking back towards the low E string. This one is quite tricky and it will require a bit of work because you're really learning how to move those fingers independently one by one. The third exercise I'm going to show you is my own adaptation on the 1, 2, 3, 4s, and I like to call this the angular 1, 2, 3, 4s. Now think of this as 2 string pairings, and I'm basically doing a pattern here. So instead of starting from the lowest note and going up, what I'm actually doing in my pairings is I'm actually starting from the 6th fret of the A string with my middle finger, and I'm playing the 6 and 7 on the A, and then the 5 and 8 on the E. So it's middle finger, ring finger, first little. Got this kind of angular sound. So it's 6, 7 on the A, 5, 8 on the E. But then I'm doing the reverse thing where I'm going 6, 7 on the E, 5, 8 on the A. So I'm kind of going inside out with the pattern. Now that in itself, just doing that on 2 strings, is a really great warm-up. So start off just by practicing that. Remembering to alternate pick all the way through. Then when you're comfortable, you can just start shifting that down string by string. So you do the first pair, which lands you up on the 8th fret of the A string. Then you go down to the 6th fret of the D string, and so on. You'll then just repeat that through all 6 strings. The fourth exercise is a chordal exercise, and I really like this because if I'm playing a gig or I'm doing something that's going to involve me using some complex chords, this really gets my fingers loosened up. So I'm going to be starting very high up the neck here at the 12th fret, and I'm going to be using 4 fingers for a chord. This is the chord shape I'm going to be doing. It's the 12 on the D string with my little finger, the 11 on the G with my 3rd finger, the 10 on the B with my middle finger, and the 9 on the high E with my 1st finger. Now all I'm going to be doing is playing that chord and then reversing it. So I'm staying on the same frets, but all the fingers get reversed. So now it's 9 with the index finger on the D, 10 on the G with middle finger, 11 on the B with the 3rd finger, 12 on the E with the little finger. So it's the same idea, but I'm just flipping the chord around. Once I've done that, I'll then just flip it back, move down a fret. So I'm always moving down one fret at a time chromatically. Now you will notice as I was doing that, I was actually shifting my hand position as well. My wrist position was moving for each chord. So when I was playing the chord that was led with the little finger, my thumb was closer to the top of the neck. And then as I went to the other shape, it dropped down. So I'm kind of shifting wrist position each time as well. This is really useful to get into the habit of doing because as you play different complex chords, you're going to be adapting different wrist positions. Start off slow with that one because again, your fingers will take a bit of time to find those shapes. Once you've gotten to grips with that and you can do that down the neck comfortably, what I do in my own playing is I actually add a rhythm to it. So I play this as 16th notes. I play the chord on the beat and then the E and I play as muted notes. This just gets you into the habit of moving complex shapes while playing a set rhythm. Now with this, start in one position just to get used to doing that. So it's 1 E and 2 E and Then, once you've got to grips with that rhythm, you can start shifting it down chromatically. Gets pretty tricky when you start putting a rhythm to it because you're moving a chord, but the real important thing there is to not lift your fingers too much so you don't allow the open string. You want to keep the mute intact. So sticking with the chord theme for warm-up exercise number 5, I'm going to take those same chord shapes and I'm just going to arpeggiate them like so. So I'm starting with the little finger leading and I'm kind of doing like a downward sweep picking motion, but in my case I am actually picking each of the strings, but you can sweep pick this if you wish. Then I'm switching to the little finger leading at the high end. So we do the same 2 chord shapes, but instead of playing them as chords, we just arpeggiate. On the way back, I'm playing each note with an upstroke. I'm actually not holding them as chord shapes either. In my case, I actually play them as individual notes. But you can, if you wish, actually hold the chord shape down. I just prefer to actually play the notes one by one. Now, once you've got that down in one position, you can then start that chromatic descending motion. I find this a really useful coordination exercise, but also it really helps visualize chord shapes, especially when I'm playing them as arpeggios, because I'm constantly moving in this one. So that is quite a tricky one, but it's a nice adaptation of that chord exercise. Like I said, you can entirely sweep pick that if you want, or you can hold the chord shapes down. Do your own thing with that one, but it is a lot of fun. Then the 6th thing that I always do to warm up is I start playing scale shapes. Now, scale shapes on their own are great warm-ups, but again, like all warm-ups, they can be boring. So what I do to make it more interesting for myself is I use all 5 shapes of the minor pentatonic at once, start in the first shape, ascending, descend the second shape, ascend the third shape, descend the fourth shape, ascend the fifth shape, and then descend the first shape an octave higher. So I'll start down in the key of A at the 5th fret, and I'll end up at the 17th fret on the E string as my last note, which is also an A, an octave higher. So to break this down, I would go from the first shape, I would go up. Then I'd switch to the second position. Descending. Third position. Fourth. Fifth. And 6th. So I've covered quite a big area of the fretboard there, but I would do that without those pauses. So I would do this as one continuous loop. I find it really useful to incorporate all 5 scale shapes into that because it actually helps you start to learn the fretboard as you're warming up. It actually removes some of the guesswork out as to where you can go, and you start to get used to seeing the relationships between each of the scale shapes. What I then do, just to make it a bit more interesting in myself, is I move into a 6-note grouping. So I'll actually start on the low E string, and I'll go up the scale 6 notes. So that takes me to the 7th fret of the D string. Then I come back to the 5th of the A, so I'm just going 1 string lower than where I've ended up. I do the same thing again. So I actually get through the scale in 4 6-note groupings. This just makes the scale pattern a little more challenging to play. Then I apply that same logic to the overall exercise. So up the first shape, down the second shape, up the third shape, and so on. Doing that just makes the whole thing a little busier and adds a little bit more focus on your alternate picking and your overall coordination as you change strings, change shapes, and everything else in between. And the final thing I do, and this really for me is just like a bit of a visualization exercise, is I just take my first position minor pentatonic scale and I run it backwards. But before I go down a note on the same string, I slide up to the next note and back from the second position. So the overall lick is going to sound like this. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking both the first and second positions and basically playing pull-offs descending through the first shape. But before I do the pull-off, I'm sliding up and back to the next note. So I'm basically imagining where that second shape is, and I'm sliding up to each of those higher notes. So the first pairing, which is the 8 and the 5 on the high E string, I'm sliding up to the 10 of the E and back, then doing my pull off. It's the same shape on the B string. On the G, it's the 7 up to the 9 and back before doing the pull off to the 5. On the D string, it's the 7 up to the 10 and back before doing the pull off. Same on the A. Then on the low E, it's the 8 up to the 10 and back before pulling off to the 5. So slowly. As I'm doing this, I'm actually looking ahead to the place where I'm sliding to. So I'm playing that 8th fret, and then I'm looking at the 10 because that's where I'm sliding to. This is like a visualization idea. You could see me looking back and forth there as I was doing it. Now, this is something you could apply over a wider area of the fretboard if you wanted to. You could take that up to the 3rd shape. Much like doing all 5 scale shapes together, the whole thing with this is its visualization. It helps you target different notes in different shapes at different points of the fretboard. Things like visualization exercises are so useful in a live environment because you do have to think quick a lot of the time when you're on stage. Sometimes if you're playing a solo on stage, you don't always have time to actually look for the notes. So having these visualization exercises which allow you to find things quite quickly is very, very useful. So yeah, there are my 7 warm-up exercises that I use to get ready for every gig, every intensive guitar session that I do. And generally I use most of these every single day before I play anyway, because like I said, warming up is very important. Let me know down below in the comments how you guys got on with some of these exercises. And if you have your own favorite warm-ups, throw those down below as well. I'd love to hear how you guys are warming up your guitar playing. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please consider subscribing to the channel like I mentioned at the start of the video. And if you want to learn more, like I said, there are more free lessons on this channel, so please hit that subscribe button and watch those lessons. I also have my own guitar course, which is linked down below in the description as well. There's a ton of great content over there that will take you to a pro level of playing. So please go check that out as well. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you soon.